It seemed like everything would flow perfectly between us, but there was something strange from the beginning. Welcome to another episode of the channel. I met Gabriel on a night that seemed like just another one of many others. We were at a gathering at a colleague's house, and he, with his laid-back manner and captivating smile, quickly captured my interest. We spent the whole night in lively conversations, laughing and discovering affinities. Gabriel was the kind of man who made you feel unique just by being by his side. At the end of the night, when he invited me to go out the following weekend, I accepted without hesitation. Our relationship progressed quickly and, within a few weeks, we were inseparable. Gabriel was attentive, funny, and always found a way to make me smile. It seemed like we had found something rare, a connection that we had both been searching for a long time. When we decided to move on to a more intimate level, I was full of expectations. However, it was at this stage that the first obstacles appeared. On the first attempt, everything seemed ideal. The environment, the mood, the way he touched me. But, to our surprise, things didn't go as planned. Gabriel was clearly anxious, and his body wasn't responding as he wanted. I tried to be understanding, assuring him that this was normal, especially for the first time with someone new. He smiled, grateful for my empathy, and promised that next time everything would be different. But, as time went by, we realized that the problem was more complex than we imagined. Each new attempt was marked by the same difficulty. Gabriel tried, but his body simply didn't respond. I could see the frustration growing in his eyes, the desperation taking over, and this worried me. He started to blame himself, wondering if there was something wrong with him, and I wondered too. Was I not attractive enough? Was I doing something wrong? But deep down, I knew that the problem wasn't individual, but a combination of factors beyond our control. Still, the situation began to affect our dynamic. Gabriel, who had always been confident and secure, began to withdraw, avoiding situations that could lead to more failed attempts, creating a barrier between us. I tried to encourage him, telling him that what mattered was that we were together and that everything would work out in time, but his frustration only grew with each new attempt. Intimacy, which should have been a time of connection and pleasure, had become a source of tension and anxiety. As we tried to cope with this new reality, I began to wonder how we would move forward, if we could overcome these challenges together, or if this would only drive us further apart. After weeks of frustration and insecurity, Gabriel decided it was time to try something different. He came home one night with a determined look on his face and a bag of groceries in his hands. "I was thinking," he said as he handed me the bag, "maybe we could try something new, something that will help us relax and have more fun." When I opened the bag, I saw that he had bought some intimate toys. Vibrators, plush handcuffs, a strawberry-scented massage gel. Gabriel had really put in the effort to choose items that could spice up our sex life. I admit I was a little surprised, but also excited about the idea of exploring something new together. It seemed promising as a way to rekindle the flame that seemed to be fading. That night, we decided to try out the new toys. At first, it was fun. Using the vibrators and massage gels created a relaxed atmosphere that we hadn't experienced in a while. I was able to let go, forget about past frustrations, and for a moment, I felt like we were finding a way to reconnect with our intimacy. For me, the toys worked as an exciting novelty, something that made me feel desired and explored in a different way. But for Gabriel, unfortunately, the result was not the same. He kept pushing himself, trying to find pleasure in the experience, but the problem persisted. His body didn't respond, and the frustration only grew. I could see the disappointment in his eyes every time something didn't work as expected. He desperately wanted these toys to be the solution to our problems, but each failed attempt seemed to only reinforce his insecurities. While I was able to enjoy the novelty, Gabriel was sinking deeper into his own doubts and fears. We tried several times, exploring different ways to use the toys, but Gabriel's response remained the same. He was becoming impatient, irritated with himself, and this ended up affecting the atmosphere between us. Instead of bringing us closer together, the situation seemed to be creating an invisible distance. I tried to comfort him, telling him that everything was okay, that it was just a phase and that we would find a way to get through it together, but he was starting to lose faith in himself, and with that, the dynamic between us was deteriorating even further. Those toys that were supposed to be a solution had become a constant reminder that something was wrong. As I continued to search for ways to maintain the connection between us, Gabriel seemed increasingly lost, unable to find a way out of what was tormenting us. Gabriel owned a trendy bar in the city, a place that attracted a loyal clientele and that, at times, was packed until late at night. He shared the business with his partner Marco, a man who seemed to have the life that many envied. Marco was charismatic, always surrounded by women, and it seemed like they simply threw themselves at his feet. He never had to try too hard to get women's attention, and Gabriel knew it. As the bar prospered, Gabriel couldn't help but feel a shadow of insecurity growing inside him. He saw Marco always with a new woman, always with a satisfied smile, and he couldn't help but wonder what was missing in his own life to reach that level of confidence. Maybe it was this constant comparison that led him to think of an extreme solution. One night, after the bar closed and the customers had already left, Gabriel and Marco stayed behind, having a few drinks and talking about life. Gabriel, already a little affected by the alcohol, decided it was time to come clean about what was bothering him. "Marco," he began, looking at his friend with a mix of determination and hesitation, "I have something I need to ask you." Marco arched an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's up, man? Tell me." Gabriel took a deep breath before continuing. "You know that my girlfriend and I, things haven't been easy between us, especially in the intimate part." He paused, waiting for Marco's reaction, who just nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I've been thinking, and maybe, I don't know, you could help." Marco frowned, not fully understanding where Gabriel was going with this. "What do you mean, help?" Gabriel swallowed hard, knowing he was about to cross a line he never thought he would cross. "I was thinking, maybe if you and her had a moment together, maybe that could solve things." Marco was silent for a moment, clearly taken aback by the proposal. He knew Gabriel was having a hard time, but he never expected his friend to suggest something like this. Finally, he spoke. "Are you serious? Do you want me to? With your girlfriend?" Gabriel nodded, trying to maintain his composure. "Yeah, if it doesn't work out, we can forget about it and move on, but I'm desperate, man. I just want things to go back to normal between us." Marco stared at Gabriel for a long moment, trying to understand his friend's motivations. He could see the anguish in Gabriel's eyes, the desperate need to find a solution, no matter how unusual it was. Finally, he sighed and shrugged. "If that's what you want, I'm in. But are you sure about that?" Gabriel didn't answer right away, but after a few seconds, he nodded again. "I do." With that, the proposal was made, and the night that would change everything began to be planned. Gabriel knew he was playing with fire, but in his mind, this was the last desperate attempt to save what was left of his relationship. When Gabriel and Marco got home, I already knew what was about to happen. Gabriel had texted me earlier, explaining his conversation with Marco and the proposal he had made. At first, I was shocked, not knowing how to react, but as the hours passed, the idea began to make sense in a way I hadn't expected. Maybe this really could be what we needed to change things. As soon as they walked in the door, I realized that they had both had a few drinks, but were still sober enough to know exactly what they were doing. Gabriel greeted me with a kiss, And Marco, always the charming one, greeted me with that smile he used to give all the women. "Let's have a little party together," Marco suggested, lifting the bottle of whiskey he had brought from the bar. Gabriel nodded, and I, trying to relax, went to the kitchen to get some glasses. The night started out relaxed, like any other time we got together with friends. We drank, talked about trivialities, laughed about old stories. As the drinks were consumed, the tension in the air began to change. I could feel Marco's eyes on me, longer, more intense, and Gabriel seemed increasingly nervous, more determined to follow through with the plan. It was then that Marco, without missing a beat, stood up and held out his hand to me. "Let's dance a little. I think we need to heat up tonight." I looked at Gabriel, seeking one last confirmation. He gave a slight nod, and I stood up, taking Marco's hand. He pulled me to the center of the room, where the low music was playing, and we began to move together. At first it was casual, just a light dance, but soon the atmosphere changed. Marco came closer, his hands firmly on my waist, guiding my movements with a confidence that made me feel a mixture of nervousness and excitement. I could feel his breath close to my neck, and the way he looked at me made my heart beat faster. Gabriel, sitting on the couch, watched everything in silence, his eyes fixed on the two of us, as the dance became more and more intimate. It was as if an invisible boundary had been crossed and the tension between the three of us reached a boiling point. The music continued, and Marco, with a mischievous smile, began to take off my clothes. Each piece that fell to the floor was accompanied by Gabriel's attentive and complicit gaze. I was nervous, but the desire I felt at that moment overcame any hesitation. Marco was the first to kiss me, a deep and lustful kiss, while Gabriel approached, wrapping me in his arms as if he were protecting what was his, but at the same time allowing me to explore this new experience. His hands joined Marco's, roaming my body, exploring every inch of exposed skin. When they were finally ready, Marco turned me over, positioning himself behind me, while Gabriel continued to kiss me. His hands never left my body. The feeling of having both of them so close, so involved, was overwhelming. Marco began slowly, exploring carefully, but with a firmness that made my body respond. Gabriel, in turn, held me, whispering words of encouragement as he himself began to warm to the situation. The dynamic between the three of us soon became more intense. They began to take turns, switching positions with a fluidity that made my body respond in ways I had never experienced before. Marco would pick me up, his strength evident as he held me, then pass me to Gabriel, who would gently lower me, only to start all over again. Each new position brought a different sensation, a new form of pleasure that I had not known was possible. They guided me, exploring every possibility, each complementing the other in a way that left my senses in a constant state of ecstasy. It was Gabriel who reached the limit first, his body finally giving in to the pleasure he had been holding back. He pulled away for a moment, panting, but his eyes never left me, as if he was savoring every moment. Marco, still full of energy, continued. His firm hands held my waist as he kept up the pace. When Marco finally reached his limit, he joined Gabriel, both of them guiding me to the end with almost synchronized precision. They brought me to the edge, their touches and whispers combining to create an explosion of pleasure that coursed through my entire body. The sensation was so intense that for a moment the world around us disappeared, leaving only the overwhelming feeling of complete satisfaction. When it was all over, the three of us were exhausted, but there was a sense of complicity in the air, as if we had shared something that no one else could understand. They looked at me with a mixture of tenderness and satisfied desire, and I knew that, as unusual as that night had been, it was something that would change our lives forever. After it was all over, the silence that filled the room was comfortable, almost welcoming. We were all exhausted, but there was an air of satisfaction, of mission accomplished. Gabriel approached me, hugging me gently, while Marco stood up to pick up the clothes scattered on the floor. Still panting, Gabriel looked me in the eyes with an expression of curiosity mixed with a hint of insecurity. "So, honey, would you be up for another date? Maybe a repeat?" I knew that this experience had been unique for all of us. I felt that Gabriel was trying to find a new path for us, trying to understand how far we could go together. I smiled, still processing everything that had happened, and gave a slight nod, making it clear that I was open to exploring more possibilities with him. Gabriel smiled back, relieved and satisfied, knowing that, no matter what the future brought, we were ready to face it together. Subscribe to the channel and like this video so we can continue with the stories.